when President Bush took office, he inherited President Clinton's surpluses, 4 years in a row, budget surpluses, on a trajectory of $5.6 trillion in surplus. And with his reckless economic policies, within 2 years, he had turned that around. And now, 8 years later, the foundation of that fiscal irresponsibility, combined with an anything-goes economic policy, has taken us to where we are today. They claim to be free market advocates when it's really an anything-goes mentality. No regulation, no supervision, no discipline. And if you fail, you will have a golden parachute and the taxpayer will bail you out. Those days are over. The party is over.
So she really gives it to the Bush administration, and many Republicans took offense to that, so much so that they're now saying it was those comments by Nancy Pelosi that may have caused many of their members to actually go against this bill. I want you to listen now, because remember, this was a debate that took some time. We were carefully monitoring all of it while it was on the air. And we want you to listen now to a couple of these in particular. Why don't we do this? Why don't we start with the Bolshevik Revolution line? This is Tad McCotter, Republican from Michigan. Listen to what he had to say about this measure earlier today. He was one of those who was definitely against it.
And it has always been the temptation in a crisis especially to sacrifice liberty for short-term promises of prosperity. And it was no mistake that during the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, the slogan was peace, land, and bread. Today, you are being asked to choose between bread and freedom. I suggest that the people on Main Street have said they prefer their freedom, and I am with them.
It's amazing to see this thing, the way it's developed, but we have been monitoring it throughout the course of the day. Let me direct your attention real quick to one thing. We've been monitoring this on Facebook, on MySpace, and on Twitter.com. That's Twitter.com/RickSanchezCNN. Look at this. Just a City Boy says, Barney Frank said it best, stop fighting on the playground. Put our country first. Oh, wait, isn't that McCain's campaign? All right, let's go to Ali Velshi. He's standing by now. He's going to bring us up to date on what the market is doing. And boy, Ali, how bad is it?
Take a look at the screen. 674 right now. It has recovered in the last 30 seconds while you've been talking. Less than a minute ago, the Dow was down 722 points, which is the biggest point drop that the Dow has ever experienced in history. In fact, I remember very clearly the day it hit 722 lower, and that was September 17th, 2001, the day the markets opened after 9/11. So we have now broken that record. At this point, anything lower than 684 points is the biggest point drop that we've ever seen. Now, that said, Rick, I want to tell you that when you are looking at your investments and you're looking at your 401k, and even when you are a professional investor looking at the markets, the point drop is not the significant part. It's the one that we can follow, but the percentage drop on the Dow is about 6.25% right now. On the S&P, it is almost 8% lower, and the S&P is of greater concern to you than the Dow. At 8%, we are now in the range of one of the top 10 losses on a percentage basis in the history of traded markets. So this is very serious. Now, all of this is to say, Rick, that the markets are not, in fact, the story here today. The stock market can continue to make money, trade up or down. We're back in that minus 700 territory now. The issue here is credit markets are frozen. And credit markets are where the companies that you work for get their short-term money in order to meet operating expenses, including rent and, in some cases, payroll. We are now at the highest point there, 724. That was the biggest loss we've seen today. That is, we are now in historic territory. When credit markets free up, we are not able, some companies may not be able to make their payroll. They may have to shut down a shift at a plant. That means people will lose their jobs, more people will lose their homes, people will have difficulty getting loans. So honestly, Rick, from a financial perspective, this is not a day to dig in on principles. It is reflective of a fundamental lack of understanding on Congress about financial markets, and I understand that, and I understand why there would be a fundamental lack of understanding amongst Americans, because we've never had to deal with this before. We've never understood how financial markets work and how credit markets work. But this, I cannot underscore enough, Rick, how serious an issue this is.
Ali, just in the time that you've been talking, this thing has gone from the 6s into the 700s now. Yeah. Can you give us any historic reference on this?
Yeah, well, listen.
How big is this from, you know, bad days in the past?
Yeah, well, listen, this is the biggest point drop that has ever been seen in a day. We just hit 730 or something. We've never seen that before, first of all, okay? So the biggest drop that we've seen in terms of points at the end of the day...
Wait. When you say we've never seen that before, are you talking about in the history of the market?
In the history of the market. You've never looked at a market at a board and seen 724.24. Never seen that ever before. On September 17th, 2001, we saw 722.11. That was the lowest the market got in point numbers. But again, we only talk in point numbers because that's the thing we see. Let's look at this in percentage terms. We are talking on the S&P 500, a loss of almost 8% in one day. 8% in one day. If you were to get 8% in a year on an investment you had, Rick, I'd say it's not fabulous, but it's a pretty good gain. To lose 8% in one day on a broad range of stocks, 500 stocks, is fairly significant, and that means there's virtually no American who is not feeling this one way or another today in their portfolio, but they're also feeling it because there's pressure on their bank, there's pressure on their CD, their money market. We're not going to lose that money, but you know, when we have to worry about what bank is next, this is not a time to be getting annoyed about whether you didn't like somebody's speech. I just have to implore folks involved to say the world is not coming to an end. It is not Armageddon. For those of you at home, there's no need to panic because there's nothing you can do about this right now. But for those who have the power to do something about this right now, understand that time is of the essence. The credit markets, the ones that your employers use to borrow money from banks and from other companies, are shut down. They are frozen. There is not money flowing between banks and between companies right now.
Well, there's a political side to this and there's an economic side to this. Ali, stand by. I think we're going to have Christine Romans in a minute. We've got reaction coming in from many of the people who are now watching this newscast, thousands and thousands of them. Many of them are quite angry, as you might expect, on both parties, apparently. Look at this. This is from Shock. Let's go ahead and take that. Let's go to our Twitter board. Pelosi was foolish to gloat about a deal not voted on yet, but the GOP is still trying to blame her for their failure. It's ridiculous. Riddle and Chick 23, there were a number of Republicans in support of the package. They're just looking for a scapegoat. All this having to do with what is going on right now in between legislators and a lot of finger pointing.